Ness. I'm the curriculum director for the GCMS school district. I am joined here tonight with Mr. Jeremy Darnell, our school superintendent, and we also have in the room tonight Mr. Rylan Davis, who we are incredibly grateful for being here tonight. He is one of our seniors that we're incredibly proud of for his involvement in an array of activities, including musicals and performance arts and technology, and that's why he's here tonight. He's running the technology for us. So we're really grateful to Rylan. Thank you for being here. Our plan for tonight is similar, if you were able to join us last time, to what we did last time. If you weren't, what we're going to do is Mr. Darnell is just going to real quick run through what we know about our Return to Learn plan and where we're at right now, and then we'll answer your questions at the end. So as we're going through, if you would please chat in your questions, I will make an attempt to record them, and then at the end I'll fire those at Mr. Darnell and he'll attempt to answer them. So that's our plan for today. Again, we welcome you and we're excited that you're here and joining us tonight as we all prepare to get back to learning. So, Mr. Darnell, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Good morning. I'm seeing the number of viewers slowly trickle up, so I'll take my time here at the beginning to allow as many people as possible to jump on so that we can minimize our back-end questions for things that might get covered at the front end. I too want to thank Rylan. This is the epitome of public education in today's world, that oftentimes your students are exponentially more comfortable with the technology, so you pull them in to help make the adults look good. So thanks, Rylan, for being here and doing that. Secondly, I would encourage all of you to send some sort of random celebration emoji, because Mrs. Nuss, who is sitting to my right across the room here, is actually celebrating her birthday today. And we had a district-wide staff meeting this morning, which started our day, and she's wrapping it up here doing this for you folks. So great commitment even on her birthday. So thanks for doing that. So if you want to put some horns and whistles and fancy emojis on the comment section to celebrate her birthday, please do. The first thing I want to talk about a little bit is just, again, reiterate the fluid nature of the circumstance that we're in. Obviously, we have things that are evolving and changing, and today was kind of the epitome of that. I created my agenda for tonight, tried to dial it down so it wasn't an hour and 10 minutes long, and I didn't keep you folks too long, and ended up being fairly lengthy anyway. And with the first bullet point being the fluid nature. And then at 1 o'clock today, I had this document come across my desk. And it is 103 pages of new guidance issued by the Illinois State Board of Education. So I'm not going to dive too far into that because I've done a brief once over of it, but have not read it thoroughly. But it's going to be something else that we here at GCMS are going to have to consider as we continue to evolve our plan to serve all the kiddos in the community. So just be aware, we are evolving and doing the best we can to manage that the best we can. The next thing I want to talk about is what GCMS is offering. Obviously, we talked last week about the 4 days a week with Wednesdays being a remote learning day, but I want to emphasize today that our intention is to only offer an in-person option for our students. We will open up and provide the digital resources and licenses that we have, but we will not be doing virtual instruction. To give you an idea of why, we have some teachers that are teaching 4 and 5 subjects. They will be doing that throughout the entire day, and to turn around and try to teach those same 4 and 5 subjects both in person and digitally is just not physically or time-wise possible. So we really want to encourage folks to send their students. We understand that there are some that may choose not to do that. In our survey that we put out, we had less than 6% of our students say that they would prefer online learning. So we're trying to listen to our constituents and focus our energy and resources into what we feel is best, because we feel very strongly that the more time we have with our kids, the better off we're all going to be, and also listening to the responses from you guys. So thank you for that. I want to talk a little bit about our PPE. First of all, I want to go through and just give you a couple of examples of masks. I do have a couple of those that are appropriate because that has been kind of a hot topic question. So the key factor for the masks is they have to cover both your nose and mouth. So I'm going to show you 3 examples. There's what they call the gator type version. So I put this on, and it actually drapes around your neck, and this is a cloth mask, and then it can fully cover both your nose and mouth. It is fairly comfortable, so it's a good option for those that don't want something hooked behind their ears. So a good one for me. I like it. I always got a hard time when I was a kid about my ears sticking out. So anything I can avoid pulling on my ears is a good thing for me. I've gotten over that pretty well as an adult. The second type is the cloth mask that is a hook behind the ears. And here's another good example. Again, it fits fairly snug to the face, but still has a little bit of room so you can move and breathe. So there's a second example. And then this is straight out of the boxes that we received that will be the disposable masks that will be available for you and for your children should you not be able to acquire those. And this is the paper medical masks that we received that are disposable. So there's a third option for you. These are fairly inexpensive. You can find these. Usually they're running around 60 cents to $1 a piece. But those are disposable. So the cloth ones are washable and reusable. The paper ones are disposable. So there's several options. I would like to encourage everybody to try to find the mask that suits your child the best. And also encourage you to stockpile your own supply if at all possible. We'd like for every kid to come to school every day with 3 to 5 masks if at all possible. We recognize that that's not going to be possible for everyone, which is why we have those 30,000 disposable masks at our leisure should we need those to provide for kids. We're also going to have some donations from community members of cloth masks. So hopefully we can meet those kids that need something a little more exciting in order to overcome the anxiety behind that and get those things put on and worn properly. The temperature screening and symptoms checks, that is something that is required. And you can either do self-certification where the kids come to school where families have certified that they neither have symptoms nor have a temperature, or we can do that at school. And we're working through the logistics of that. It is required. We will need to make sure that's done every day. And if we can find a good option to be able to track and ensure that that can be done at home, we're going to try to do that. If not, we will be looking at alternatives for entry into the building to make sure that that gets done properly, just to make sure that everybody that comes to school and is in the school is in a position where they're safe and healthy and won't put others at risk. So we've already talked about our plans for Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays being full attendance days. There's one thing that's going to be a little bit different that we're going to need folks to help us out on, and that's the entry into the building. We've always been able to have kids dropped off fairly early, but because of our necessity to keep kids separated and to properly be able to supervise all of those kids, we're going to ask that no students are dropped off prior to 8 a.m. So we used to open our doors to the cafeterias, especially at the elementary and middle school, at 7:30 and allow kids in. And quite frankly, we don't have the staff or the space to do that safely, so we would prefer that all kids be dropped off after 8 a.m. We recognize there's going to be a little bit of a delay because of the transitions of kids getting to class for the start of school at 8:15. But at 8 a.m., all teachers will be on site available for supervision in their classrooms, and that'll actually give kids a little more time with their first hour teachers. So we feel like that's the best way to ensure that kids are safe, staff are respected for their time, and that we do things the right way. So 8 a.m. is the arrival time. And then we're also going to ask that everybody ensures that they do a good job of pickup at the end of the day and try to get the kids off site by 3:30, unless they have an activity or an arrangement with the teacher either before or after school for additional help. We still want to try to do those things where possible and appropriate. For our Wednesdays, I want to talk a little bit about what those days are going to look like. I know there were quite a few questions about how intense that was going to be, what the expectations were going to be, so I'll go over what a Wednesday schedule will look like. From 8 to 8:30 for our staff, that'll kind of be their check-in and settle-in time. And then from 8:30 to 11:30 every day, it will be the equivalent or similar to office hours. And that's where our teachers are going to be readily available to engage with kids, whether that be through Seesaw with the younger kids, through Google Classrooms, parent phone calls, emails, FaceTime, Google Meets. There'll be a lot of different options. It's not going to be for new direct instruction, but it will be where teachers are there to be able to support whatever learning that is going on and the continuation of learning that we expect from Tuesday to Thursday. So hopefully those 3 hours will be really valuable time for most of our kids and for our teachers to provide additional support and assistance. And then from 11:30 to 12:15 will be lunchtime for everybody, and then 12:15 to 2 we'll be using that time for professional development, and that also would be a great time for your kids to be doing any catch-up, additional reading, practice on their fundamental skills, things that you feel are most valuable and most essential for your kids to invest their time into. And then beyond 2 o'clock, we recognize that we put in a pretty full day at that point, and we expect everybody to do what's best for their families. So hopefully that'll be a good opportunity for us to do what we intend, which is a continuation of learning with putting a minimal amount of stress and burden on families, on kids, on caregivers, sometimes babysitters, sometimes daycare providers. So we want to make sure that we're respectful of that and recognize that when we're doing that for that 1 day per week. Overall, the intensity of that day is not meant to be the same as a regular school day, but it is meant to be a continuation of learning. A big ticket question that a lot of folks have been asking is, are we going to have sports and activities? And the simple answer for that is we still do not know. We are waiting on guidance for that. My understanding is the IESA, which is our middle school association, is supposed to make some announcements on this Friday, tomorrow. And IHSA, I believe, has a meeting next week, and hopefully we'll hear some guidance from them very soon. I know we're getting dangerously close to the activities. And everybody wants to know where we stand there. But on a very positive front, GCMS is going to provide opportunities for those activities and events to occur with 3 different tiers or levels. The first tier being we're in full participation. Everybody gets to compete and practice and have the activities that were prescribed. Tier 2 would be if we're not allowed to compete or travel, we would still ask for our coaches and sponsors to still engage with the kids in practice and skill building with the kids face to face as much as possible and as much as allowable through our guidance and standards. And then tier 3 would be the worst case scenario, and that's if we are forced into a full remote learning where we cannot have contact with students. And that's where our coaches and sponsors and activity directors would all find ways to digitally stay engaged. Could be Zoom meetings, it could be weekly workouts. And these are all things that we recognize the values in those extracurricular activities. We want to maintain those positive relationships and those positive experiences. So we've got 3 levels of ways to do that prepared and hope to be able to do that when the time comes. Another question that was a big one from last week is what will we do if someone is found to be COVID positive? And the most important thing to know there is that we will follow the guidance and expertise of the Ford County Public Health Department. There are standards that they have to follow. To give you an idea, if a student comes down positive, the students who would be considered in contact would be any student that was within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. So just walking by in the hallway is not an exposure. Sitting in the same cafeteria when we are socially distanced is not an exposure. So we're going to do the best we can to maintain our social distancing so that when we have those contact cases, we can minimize the impact it has on school. The hardest part about that, though, is I will be notifying you if we have a positive case, and we will not tell specific details about the student who was affected out of confidentiality and privacy. And I know with absolute certainty that that will create some uncertainty, some uneasiness, and some discomfort for the folks that don't know whether or not their child was exposed. The one reassurance that I can give you is that if your child was directly exposed, then you will be contacted either by a school official or by someone from public health. So please know that those that need to know will. And we hope that you'll trust that we'll do that the right way and to the best of our ability. If we have family members, similar situations, there could be required quarantines, but again, those things are going to be dictated by Ford County Public Health and will be relayed to us. So we'll try to keep you in the loop as to how that whole process works. Each situation is unique and different, and we will rely on our health experts to help guide us through those situations. One other thing that I want to just reiterate is we did send out the transportation opt-out form and information. So basically what we're trying to find out is if there are folks that are not going to utilize our bus service. if they would please share that with us as soon as possible, because that will help Carrie Ryan, our transportation director, in formulating routes in order to minimize the amount of time that kids are on buses and minimize the density of population on those buses, again, to try to maximize safety, security, and distance when at all possible. Next thing I want to talk about is registration. Registration is going to be held on the same day, August 5th, but we are making available on our app and on our website, the new app. If you didn't get a chance to check that out yet, please do. Look up GCMS 5 on the app stores and you will find it very quickly. It is super slick and is much more user-friendly than our past website, so you should be able to find everything you need. If you look under documents and you go to the different buildings, you'll be able to find all the documents that you need for any aspect of registration. So hopefully you can track those down. You can print those off even today and start filling out those registration documents. We will have a collection day on the 5th of August. And we will collect those anytime there. After August 1st, offices will start to be open and we'll have access. For those folks that don't have the means to print, we will also be making some paper packets available to you, and we'll communicate where and when those can be picked up very, very soon. Free and reduced lunch applications are also on there. If you did receive the message on Monday morning that went out about registration fees, those are out there, and we did attach the free and reduced lunch application. If you qualify for free and reduced lunch, you also qualify for a fee waiver, which eliminates those registration fees. We recognize that there are a lot of families that were put into different financial situations and burdens because of the events of the last few months. So we wanted to make sure that those two pieces were delivered together so that we can help people through that process, so that if in fact they do qualify, they don't have that additional financial burden hanging over their head. You can mail the checks for the registration fees to your respective kids' buildings, or bring those in when you sign up and bring in your registration paperwork. We will ask that when you come to the school for registrations, it's not going to be a sit down and sign up for a lot of things. It's literally going to be a walk-in, drop-off. Make sure we know that you're coming, and move along. And we'll make sure that we have everything clearly marked for social distancing. Of course, masks will be required, and we're going to ask that each family be represented by just one person in order to try to minimize the crowds. I know in the past it's been kind of an exciting time. The kids come in, they walk down and see their classrooms. We are going to try to limit that a little bit more this year, just out of caution and safety for the people that are working that day and for everybody who's transitioning in and out. Just to make it a whole lot more efficient. We would ask that everybody who can, please complete your registrations as soon as possible once those are made available. And by August 7th, we will have some folks that may choose not to register. We always have some folks that move away that we don't know about. And if we can get all those numbers solidified by August 7th, it allows us to potentially make classroom adjustments if necessary, which will keep the classes fairly balanced, make sure that our numbers are minimized in all spaces, which again will help us with the social distancing aspect while in classrooms. The last thing is, if there are folks that know, if you're hearing these messages and you're starting to see the guidance, or no matter what plan that we create, that you're not going to send your students back to GCMS this year, we greatly appreciate if you communicate that to us for two reasons. One, so we know and we can plan. And number two, so that we can share with you and talk to you about what your plans are and how we can possibly support you with resources or ideas to ensure that your kids have a continuity of learning. Because at the end of the day, we want all the kids, but we recognize that there are going to be those folks that are not comfortable with the circumstances and will make alternate decisions. So we want to respect that. So substantially faster than last week. I went through a lot of things really quickly, and I tried to not be too scripted, but also stay on course. So I'm excited to hear and see your questions. Erin is an awesome moderator for me. She keeps me on task, and it's good because actually when I don't see the comments, she shares the questions with me. So that helps me to kind of stay focused on the question at hand. So I'm anxious to hear your questions today.
If you have them, please feel free to start chatting them in. We do have a smaller group here tonight, but if you have questions, we want to answer them, or we want to tell you that we will find an answer for it. So if you have something out there that you're wondering about, or maybe other people have been wondering about, please do let us know. While you're doing that, we do have a couple that I can tackle. I do want to let you know that our tech director, Don Worthington, recently asked me to update you that the address for Lumen is changing. So there will be a lot of pushing out and information about that coming your way. But the address for Lumen is changing, so brace yourselves. That's something we want to make sure we say early and often so you're not going to the wrong place. And initially it's going to ask you to re-log into Lumen, and it might give you some warnings, but it's the same Lumen, it's the same information you can find there, just a different address. One of the questions that was out there, I'll answer as well, was in regards to, are we still having kindergarten night? Same thing, question was asked, is freshman transition day still happening? Kindergarten night is happening. It is just going to look very different, and we're working on that right now, of trying to make those plans and figure out how we could do that. But we know it's really important that we get those kids and those parents into the building together, so you guys can see the classroom, talk about it, get some framework, a point of reference, so that you can talk about that with your kiddo a lot ahead of time, so that they're comfortable with you and with the environment before they start to come into school. So yes, we're having kindergarten night, and yes, more information will be coming soon. Please keep it on your calendar, because it's definitely still a save the date. Freshman transition day is still happening as well, and the high school staff is meeting next week to talk about how that can happen and what they're going to do. So the entire high school staff is actually getting together to brainstorm and to talk about troubleshooting how that day is going to look. But again, please keep it on your freshman's calendar. That is going to still occur. Something will be happening. JD, some questions maybe you can answer in regards to masks, both of them sort of straightforward. Just, would a bandana qualify as a face covering? Would it qualify as a mask, a bandana? And do you have any suggestions or ideas about preschoolers? We had a parent who was concerned probably won't be able to find masks for preschoolers. Do we know anything about that?
Sure. So to answer the bandana question first, yeah, cloth coverings are acceptable. The rules are, though, that you need to make sure that it fits snugly around the nose and mouth. So you can't just have it draped down to where the lower mouth or lower jaw is free and open, because the main thing we're trying to reduce is the possibility of saliva or spit flying. And so if you're not covered below the mouth, then that won't do the job. So we need to make sure those are secure. And then the other thing is, for little ones, there are varieties, and I know you can look on Pinterest, you can look on Google. I know recently Target has had some various sized masks that should work for our smaller populations. And that's going to be a little bit harder to find at times, I know. Our masks actually are almost like an accordion, the disposables, so you can actually keep them fairly narrow, and they will work for younger kids. Sometimes we have to be creative and tie off the strings to make them a little bit shorter for the shorter distance to the ears, but they can work, and we'll make sure that they keep the intended purpose, which is keeping the nose and mouth covered.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about how people can pay for registration. Can you pay for registration online?
No, we do not have the means to do registration payment online, so that's going to be one where you can either send a check in or you can bring that in on the day of registration. Again, those fees are located online and were blasted out earlier this week. Mr. Willis just walked in to join us, so I can say thanks to him publicly, because he was great about getting those documents out to you guys on an early Monday morning, so thank you for doing that. But right now, the only thing we have electronic payment for are for lunch services, for food service meals. But we're going to work towards that in the future. That's kind of a new venture. We felt like we broke into the 2000s last year by allowing for payment for lunches. And we're going to continue to work on trying to streamline more and more documents to be fillable online, so that you can just submit and send those forward through an email to try to minimize those contacts. We've been working towards that anyway, and this is causing us to consider that even further.
Thank you. A lot of people are shouting out with ideas they have there in regards to where you can get child-sized masks. So thank you for sharing those.
Awesome.
I'm jotting them down for myself as you're sharing them right now as well, to look for my child. So I know most probably really appreciate those references. Thank you. Let's talk just a couple real quick things that are specific that a lot of people might be wondering. If you paid for driver's ed last year because you have a driver's ed fee, if you paid for it last year, do you have to pay for it again this year? And the answer to that is no, you don't have to pay for it again this year unless for some reason your student had failed the course. The only time when you have to repeat the fee is if there's a failure. As long as your student is just completing the course because it wasn't finished last year, no, you do not repay for the fee. A question was about pre-K drop-off. How is that going to work? And pre-K drop-off is sort of going to work like any other time when you'd be coming to pick up your child at school, likely, is that we're going to use our camera systems extensively. So if you're dropping your child off, you will drop off at the door, and a paraprofessional or a teacher will pick the student up at the door, and we will meet them there, but unlikely parents will walk the students inside for pre-K pickup and drop-off. Same thing for, go ahead, Mr. Darnell's going to.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take this one because I know this is going to be one that's hard for all of us to swallow. We are going to do everything we can to restrict movement and guests into the building, which means a lot of the things that were super fun and have kind of become rites of passage and things that we enjoy doing and things that we emotionally need and want to do are not going to be possible. So the hardest one for this year, I'm going to tell you, is that we're not going to allow parents in on the first day, and that's going to be really hard for our kindergarten parents, and I know that, and I'm sorry for that. But we just do not have the means to spread people out. So we will have a lot of staff on hand to be there to greet parents at the door and to greet those little ones at the door. And we know that's going to be hard. There are always tears in that process, and we recognize that, but it's something that we have to do. We cannot allow an additional 60 or 70 or 80 people into the building when we already have trouble controlling just the students and staff population to work within the guidelines. So that's one that I was dreading having to share, but unfortunately it's the right thing to do to ensure the most safe environment for all involved. And I can tell you that in the past, and I've been there every day for the last 4 years on the opening day to see that transition, and there will be a lot of staff members that will be there to nurture and care for your kiddos. And they will be fine at 8 o'clock, just like before they were fine at 8:15 when all folks walked out the door. So I don't want you to think that we're being insensitive to the emotion of that event, but it is something that we need to do to be safe and cautious.
Okay, thank you. Another question that I'm not sure we have complete answers on right now, but are we going to be using lockers at the middle school and high school? Should students be planning on using lockers?
Yeah, so the building level plans are going to continue to get refined. So one thing I want you to know, we're trying to really hit on the big ticket items of things that you have to know. Like, for example, you have to be able to plan for Wednesdays, your kids being at home. We know you need advance notice for that. The daily managements of the buildings are things that are going to continue to get refined and likely will continue to get refined right up until the time when students arrive. As we get those refined plans, we will push those things out. Speaking specifically to lockers, we will intend to use lockers as much as possible. I believe we are in a position where we can go every other locker. We're also going to likely bring back the utilization of backpacks at the high school so that kids can minimize the number of times that they have to go to their lockers and maximize the amount of their own stuff that they can have on them. So we are going to make some concessions there to try to minimize the hallway traffic and congestion and amount of time spent in those spaces.
Can we talk a little bit about, well, real quick, just to troubleshoot a few that are out there. Yes, if you have a change in your bus plans, if your transportation plans have changed, or if you didn't get the survey, please contact me. I'm the one who sent the survey initially, so if you respond to me, I'll get you to the right person. Or if you never got one at all, send an email to nuss.aaron@gcmsk12.org, and we will get you that transportation survey so you can get it filled out, please. Let's talk about communication this year, Mr. Darnell. Are we going to use Remind still primarily? Are we using the push notifications now through the app? What is our plan?
So yes, is our plan. The intention of Remind will now be more announcement based, and we will be using the app extensively. Our social media connections, we have the ability to send out consistent messages through all social media platforms, and we will still use an all-call system. So there will be various ways in which that will happen. The all-call and the notifications, if you are a user of Twitter, you will see the Twitter announcements. If you're a user of Facebook, you will see those. If you get engaged with the app, when you sign up, it will ask you, do you want notifications? And if you want those notifications when there's variations or news or events or announcements, I would encourage you to engage with that. That will be a great way, no matter what platform you use, that if we put something through that app, that you will see it. So a lot of the same mechanisms. We try really hard to meet people where they are. In order to maximize. We know that sometimes folks don't see all avenues. Just like this event, we have 159 people watching right at this moment, but the last video had almost 4,000 views. So we know a lot of people came and saw those things after the fact. And Mr. Willis, our tech guru, was able to put that on YouTube, which a lot of folks use. So another medium in order to deliver messages. So we'll try to maximize the ways that we can and be as consistent as we can. And quite frankly, we are also sometimes dependent on you guys sharing information. Or putting a share so someone that's not following as closely may be able to get that. And then, of course, we will always encourage you that if in doubt, call us. That's what we're here for. If it's district-wide, call the unit office. I regularly post my email. You can always send messages that way. And each building and its leaders and all of your teachers for your children are going to be very responsive this year.
Okay, how about 2 questions about how things are going to look on a daily basis? Can you talk a little bit about how you're going to keep kids 6 feet apart in the hallways in between classes if we already don't have enough room, which I think you've already sort of addressed what the expectations are for that, but maybe talk about it a little bit more about passing periods, and what will student release times look like? Can the parents expect student release to look the same as last year?
Yeah, those are great questions, and thank you for whoever asked those. So first of all, I think it's American Association of Pediatrics. Did I get that acronym
Yes,
right?
You did.
So the American Association of Pediatrics actually recommend 3 feet of social distancing for children. So that's something that actually gives us a little bit more comfort in this process, because we know that in passing times, in times where kids are going to congregate even despite best efforts, there will be those opportunities for that to occur. So we're going to do the best we can. We're going to create some traffic flow patterns that will minimize contacts and connections. But our passing times, by and large, are going to be run as they have in the past. We're fortunate because our building capacities are significantly larger than our student populations. So we actually have the ability for kids not to be overly crowded. Can I sit here and honestly say that the kids will be 6 feet apart as they're transitioning? No, absolutely not. But that's why the masks are essential. That's why we're going to minimize physical contacts with trying to avoid touching each other. Teachers will be on hand in the hallways to try to enforce those rules to the best of our ability. In classrooms, we're maximizing square footage and floor space. But we are also still going to have some situations where kids are going to be sitting in closer contact. We did purchase 350 24 by 28 plexiglass shields that we'll be able to put in between students. So if they're sitting across from each other at a table or a round table or a square table, we can put that up there, and that'll allow for another layer of protection for the kids when they are in closer contact because of necessity of space. So we have quite a few things that we have in place to be able to minimize and mitigate those risks. Additionally, and Erin, Mrs. Nuss came up with a really cool thing for our teacher slide today, and it was, we're encouraging people to take a hike. So one of the things that we're going to make sure that we practice is opportunities to get up, get moving, take the kids for a walk outside, for mask breaks, for fresh air, to stretch their legs, to minimize some of the burdens that the daily grind tends to bring on. So our folks are very aware that that's going to be necessary, essential, and important, so we're going to try to minimize those things as well. Is there anything I missed in that one? That was kind of a multi-part.
And generally, release times are going to look the same at each building, but
Yes.
It might be more staggered.
Yeah, our release times are going to be fairly similar because of transportation. We will let our walkers out and get moving as soon, a little bit earlier this year to get them separated from space. We always have a little bit of a log jam at dismissal because a lot of folks get lined up, and that'll probably be a little bit worse this year because we are going to have some folks that choose to opt out of transportation. So we recognize that. So I'm just going to encourage and ask that everybody has patience. Work with your children to find good pickup and drop-off points. So that maybe you're not sitting in those same lines. I know the middle school is the biggest challenge for that because we kind of have one way in and one way out. But we'll hope that those things go smoothly, and we'll all be very patient with that. And we're going to have ample supervision of adults to be out and make sure that the kids are transitioning in a way that is respectful and appropriate and safe.
Good deal. We've got a bunch of questions about registration. So some are simple and some are a little bit more complex. One of the first is, how do you find out if we're not having registration? How do you find out who's your student's teacher is? I think the answer to that is Lumen.
Yep.
So Lumen will eventually, right now, like all the high school students already know what their schedules are and what classes they have. The Lumen will be opened up in the near future, probably around the same time as registration, so that you can log in and see who your student's teacher is. Can you clarify two things about registration, Mr. Darnell? Are kids invited to registration, or is it a good idea for just the parent to attend? And the registration fee increased to $125. Can you talk about that briefly?
Sure, you bet. So first of all, we do want to minimize the number of people that come in for registration. So I know we've had people that have brought their entire family in before. We welcome that. In fact, we really enjoyed that because it was a great opportunity for us to see kids and families together, and that was a terrific moment. But for this year, we are going to ask that when you come for that registration time, that you only have one person to come in and get that taken care of. That'll help to minimize our space and maximize our spacing of folks. The second part was
the fees.
The fees. So yeah, the fees went up quite a bit. So we went from I believe it was 85 and 100 to 125 and 175. But a couple things I want to really emphasize on that. Number one is we did eliminate all of our other course fees. And participation fees to try to minimize the overall burden. In fact, those folks that tend to engage in activities are actually likely going to see a reduction in their overall costs. We are also very much in line with the other schools in our area by setting our fees that way. In fact, if you add course fees and additional fees, we're going to be significantly lower than most. But that's also one of the reasons why we recognize that increase. And I'll be honest with you, the timing of that increase is not ideal because of some financial burdens that some folks have faced. But that's why I wanted to really emphasize the importance of filling out that free and reduced lunch form. A lot more people will qualify. You'll be surprised at the amount of money that can be made and still qualify for a reduced price lunch, which then translates into a registration fee waiver. I can tell you that our most important aspect of this entire process is getting your kiddos here. So if the financial burden is something that you need to have some conversation with us about, please reach out. We recognize there is a variance there, but we also know that those fees are in line and are appropriate for a year's worth of schooling and the resources necessary to make that happen.
A couple other questions that came in that we can answer are 8th grade night and 6th grade transition night. I think 8th grade night is probably thinking the freshman transition day, and we are still having freshman transition day. As I said, the high school's working on planning that. And 6th grade transition night is happening. It's going to look different than it has in the past probably, but we will still be doing everything we can. The 6th grade team's talking about and planning for what they can do to make sure that those students who are at that key transition moment feel welcome and comfortable coming into the middle school for sure. So yes, please do keep those things on your schedules at this time. Can you talk, Mr. Darnell, a little bit about what lunch is going to look like? Will there be hot lunch? Will there be hot breakfast?
Yeah, you bet. So breakfast, I'll talk about that first because that's a little bit easier. We have Ray Goen, our food service director, does a really good job of tracking and kind of keeping an idea of how many students we serve. And we are confident that we're going to be able to serve breakfast in the cafeterias with the number of students that we have that usually participate. Those meals will oftentimes be quick grab and go breakfast. Likely not hot. On occasion they could be, but those are probably going to be more the packets of cereal or Pop-Tarts or things of that nature. All are approved meals that are provided. We are somewhat dependent on the food subsidies and commodities that we receive from the government. So the diversity of meals is dependent on that. So we want those to be as quick and efficient as possible. to minimize, contacts. So if we can avoid having bowls and spoons more often than not, I think that's going to be in the best interest of everybody involved. So those will be relatively quick. Lunches are still going to be a work in progress. Middle school and high school are pretty solid in their plans because we have some older kids with a little more flexible space. The elementary school is the greatest challenge because we have the largest numbers of kids. We are going to be able to put one full grade level at a time in our cafeteria, which will essentially be divided into two spaces. And in that cafeteria, we're fortunate because we can put a full grade level with only having 3 children per table. So they will be sitting at tables with other kids, but they will be able to maintain that 6 feet of social distancing in that process. So we're actually a little bit excited about that. We're still working through the logistics of what we're going to do with that second group. Could very likely be grab and go lunch where it's going to be in the classroom. We could try to utilize some other larger spaces. That's one thing that we're still working through the logistics on because we do want to make sure that when they're eating, we're able to space those kids out as best as possible. So to create some safety, but we also want to make sure that we're not transitioning any more dishes or things that could spill or stain as much as possible because obviously if we're not using our cafeterias, we want to minimize the cleanup, whether that be for custodians or for staff.
Okay, there are not a lot of questions sort of trickling in at this point, so if you do have any, please go ahead and get them posted there on the chat so that we can try to answer them here today. A few other just real quick things were things like, are we still having senior parking spots? We are still having senior parking spots. The sign up for that will look different. It will most likely be electronic. It'll be coming from Mr. Gerard soon. It won't just all of a sudden go out and some kids will miss it and some won't. He will warn them ahead of time and give a specific time when that sign up will happen. So that will be coming in the near future. And I do not see any other major things out there. While you're thinking about it, I will give a quick push and say it's really important that you fill out your census if you haven't filled out your census yet. We get a lot of federal dollars as a school district due to census numbers. And Ford County right now is hovering in the 60s. We would love to get higher to that because really the more people who fill it out, the more money we're probably going to get. So please do fill out your census form if you have not yet. I don't see any other major questions coming through. Nobody commented anything while we were on that topic, so I think, JD, if you just want to wrap it up and give us some closing thoughts, we're about done.
Sure, you bet. So one thing that's a real positive for the junior class, I'll go ahead and throw this at you. I do believe that we are going to offer open lunch for both juniors and seniors. It will still be incentive based, so you're going to have to earn that privilege and prove that you can handle that the right way. But I think we're going to try to do that because that will take a few more kids, give them the opportunity to go home and have a meal, and minimize the number of kids that are in the cafeterias. So juniors are probably sitting there applauding, and seniors are like, "Man, why didn't that happen to me last year?" So we are doing that. One other thing that I'm excited about is we are working through the logistics of having 3 nurses on hand. Our district has always had 2. We are likely going to have 3 nurses, 1 for each building, which will make the management of the health aspects of this and the day-to-day health needs of our student population much more efficient. So I'm super excited about that and the partnership with Gibson Area Hospital to make that happen. So we'll hopefully have that all nailed down here in the next few days. So I'm appreciative of the people that take the time to listen. It's important that we hear your voices. It's important that you see that we are doing everything we can to be as transparent as possible, to address the questions and concern as much as possible. I've seen an awful lot out there, some things positive, some things negative, but I'm going to tell you that the investment of time and energy by the educators at GCMS this summer has been exponential over any other summer because we want your kids back and we want to be with them. We want to make sure that we can do everything we can to mitigate last year's loss and prepare for what could be coming in the future if we were to be shut down for remote learning again. We want to build those relationships with you guys as parents and build that trust, and more importantly, build that trusting relationship with the kids. That's why we're here. That's why we do what we do. And I know we have an incredibly dedicated staff that wants to put forth that effort. So we appreciate your patience. We appreciate your constructive criticism and certainly your questions. Aaron,
We've
do you
got
have
a
a
couple
couple other?
other real quick
Sure.
that have just come in that I think we can answer pretty easily. The fever threshold is 100.4
Yep.
or 2 degrees above normal.
Right.
So 100.4 is the fever threshold, and that is, again, we're just following everything that's out there from not only our own public health department, but everything that we're getting from the national. Question regarding homecoming dance. Do we have any idea if homecoming might or might not happen? Not just the dance, but just homecoming in general. Might or might not happen. Any guidance on that?
Those two questions. Number one is no, we don't have a clue. As of right now, obviously, if you can't have gatherings of 50 or more, then we're going to be stuck in the same situation we were last spring, where those things can't occur. I'm sure if, in fact, we are able to have homecoming, or if we can't, we will find ways to create experiences for our kids. It's what we did last spring, and we'll do it again this fall because we recognize the value in each of those events for kids and the memories that are created with those. So we'll do everything we can to find ways to get creative and have those celebrations. And the one other thing I want to tell you about the fever threshold, because I'm sure some people are like, why would you allow anything other than normal? And that's really quite simple, because when kids are walking to school, their body temperature is going to elevate. So to think that everybody's going to be 98.6 when they walk in the door is just not realistic. What we're really hoping for and encouraging is that you partner with us to do what's right when you know there are symptoms or your kid is running a fever because they're starting to become ill. There's a difference between a 99 because they're coming off of a respiratory infection and a 99 because they just ran to school. So we want you to partner with us, do the right thing, make those choices, err on the side of caution when your child is sick for something above and beyond something that's very normal like allergies or something like an ear infection. We have a lot of young ones that come with common ear infections, and those things aren't dangerous to other kids. They're not infectious. The flu is. So making good conscious choices about the health concerns and listening to your medical professionals, your doctors, your nurse practitioners, listening to their advice and following that advice and erring on the side of caution is going to give us the opportunity to stay engaged with your kids longer. And so we need everybody to be on board with that.
Two other quick questions, I think. Unless you have any other questions, please feel free to chat them in. How are PE classes being handled? And I'll tackle that. We just met today, and our PE department, PE health teachers are really working hard on figuring out details and what that can look like. And they're being really proactive about brainstorming how does PE look if it's independent, if you're not allowed to collaborate, if kids can't touch each other, if we can't have contact sports. And what they landed on is we took a hard look at numbers and who would be in locker rooms at the specific times and the size of our locker rooms, and students will still be changing for PE. That was actually something also that came out of the Return to Learn committee, was that the student body would prefer to change, at least the student voices who were there, because of their concerns about what it means to not change and then still be physically active. So they wanted to be more comfortable and therefore change. So students will still be changing for PE at the middle and high school when appropriate. And PE will look different, but it's still going to be focused on doing and keeping our kids healthy, getting them involved in healthy exercises and healthy living. And so that will be our focus. It just might look a little bit different than it has in the past for kiddos, but it will still be PE class, and it will still be all about staying healthy. So we have a commenter who is asking Mr. Darnell about the state of Illinois says you are supposed to offer both e-learning and in-student. What if we want to sign up for it? Saying you're not following the ISB recommendations of giving parents two options.
Yeah, so that is actually something that just came out today. So that's something we're still going to continue to investigate. And here's the hard part, and I want to give you the honest answer for why we're lending towards not offering the online. The offering that most districts are doing for online is bringing in a digital curriculum to where there is not instruction being managed by staff. For districts our size, we have limited staff members, and engaging with a very small portion of our population multiple ways through both digital and in-person is going to be a real challenge. So what most districts are doing is they're telling parents that they have to opt in or opt out for an entire semester. So essentially, if you're going to choose to homeschool your child and do a digital option, you have to do that for the entire semester. There is a possibility and even a likelihood that at some point this year that we are going to go to full remote learning. If you are opted out and we go to full remote learning, then you will still be using that digital platform versus the GCMS instruction. And I feel pretty strongly that the GCMS instruction is going to align better with the continuation of learning that we expect from year to year. So we really want to encourage everybody to be in place. I recognize, and that's a fair question, is if we're required, we're going to do it. If we do not have a choice, we will create a digital option. But I want you to know that those digital options are not that a teacher is going to be teaching your child every subject that they were signed up for through GCMS. It will be a digital option that has credential-bearing courses, but they're not going to be the same as what we do, and they're not going to have the direct support of GCMS staff. It's not a bad solution to go to a digital platform. For those folks that choose to homeschool, there are great options out there. There are good curriculums. If you have the mechanism and the means to be able to deliver that curriculum to your child, I applaud you for being willing to do that, investing in that. But I also do firmly believe that if we're looking at the long game of staying engaged with GCMS, I really hope that people will encourage and do that. And again, if need be, and again, if that guidance is directive that we need to offer that, we will do like what most are. And if you want to look at the most common platform, it's called Edmentum. It's one that an awful lot of folks, awful lot of districts around our area. The HOIC has several schools using it. The Illini region, which is Ford, Champaign, Vermilion County, a lot of folks are using Edmentum, so you can certainly look into that curriculum and see what that would look like if you chose to go digital. Because if we get put into that position where we have to do that, then we'll certainly find a way to make that happen.
Good deal. Thank you. A couple other, just real quick. Mr. Stone, one of our high school student council sponsors, has chimed in and said we're going to do something fun to make sure Spirit Week happens, and then Homecoming Spirit Week is there, regardless of whether we have a football game or a dance. So quick shout out, Mr. Stone. You know I always really appreciate Disney-themed Spirit Days. If you could put a plug in there, any chance I have to bring out my princess dress and tiara is, of course, appreciated. Maybe last question that we can't really answer, Mr. Darnell, is do we know definitely what's going to happen with self-certification, how that's going to work, and what parent responsibility will be?
Yeah, you bet. First of all, I want to give a little shout out to Mr. Stone as well. I went with my daughter to get some Stone Cold the other night, and he gave me some very positive advice to not wear an orange shirt with a white brick background because I kind of look like a criminal in last week's presentation. And after seeing the Ford County Chronicle's frozen picture of me looking like somebody just poked me in the elbow, so we threw on the GCMS shirt today, so Aaron and I matched with our red and black for the day. So thanks for that advice, Mr. Stone. I appreciate that. Good looking out. As far as the self-certification, obviously the most important thing is, and that's kind of what I was referencing earlier, is being a good partner. We're going to figure out a way for parents to either digitally self-certify or we're going to have to do those self-certifications at our door, or there are districts that are making the assumption that if students are sent, then they have been self-certified. We won't go that route, likely. We are going to do something more conservative because we have to ensure that the kids that come through our doors are safe to be there. So we will either have a digital solution for that. We're still working through the logistics of what that would look like, where we can check every single child every single day, or we will be finding ways for our staff to address that at the point of contact when the kids enter the building, which obviously would be more logistically challenging. But if those logistical challenges create more security and safety, then we'll find ways to make that work as well.
I think that's all we have right now. There are no other major questions coming in, so I think we're going to wrap up and tell everybody thank you very much for being here this evening. Same bat time, same bat channel next week. We shall return is our plan right now. The Return to Learn committee has their final meeting this Monday, or what we anticipate will be the final meeting, and so then the full document of the plans will be released as a draft, because most likely there will be changes. As we already saw today, changes are happening very, very quickly, so we will be responsive to those changes, but you can look for definitely some updates and a document to preview before our next meeting, so that if there are questions about that, we plan to take those during our next Facebook Live next Thursday. Anything I missed, Mr. Brown?
No, appreciate it. One thing I do want to really reiterate that 103-page document, and I do not know it. In fact, I kind of laughed. Mr. Willis is here, and I believe his wife asked if there was a Cliff Notes version that had been placed out there because it's pretty meaty. But I want you to know that these are recommendations, and this is the greatest challenges that school districts across the country are facing. Is oftentimes the things that are coming to us are suggestions, recommendations, or considerations. And at the end of the day, we have to sort through all of those things, take our unique circumstances, and make the best decision we can. I'm super thankful for the questions, criticisms, and concerns that keep coming in from you guys, the ones that are coming in from our staff on the Return to Learn Committee, and of course the 150 plus employees at GCMS, because these things are all being shared with them as well to ensure that every angle and every category is being considered. So keep up the great work of staying engaged and asking us questions, and we'll keep fighting to find a way for your kiddos to be here and be safe and ensure that we help teach and learn for all of our kids. Have a great week.
Thank you.